What's up everyone, Jun with the Sushi Man, and in this video, I'll be teaching you one of my favorite chicken dishes of all time, which is chicken katsu. Katsu is short for cutlet, or katsuretsu in Japanese pronunciation, and it's typically made with either pork or chicken. It may look intimidating, but it's actually very simple to make. We're talking only 4 ingredients, and I mean, who doesn't like fried chicken, right? Especially Japanese katsu. It's juicy, tender, savory, and it has that light and perfectly crispy exterior. Always a huge hit with my family, and I guarantee it will be with yours as well. Alright, now let's jump right in. Alright, let's go over our ingredients. So first, the chicken. Now, I like to use boneless, skinless chicken thighs, but you can use skin on thighs or chicken breasts if you prefer. And I'm using 2 large thighs, which is a little less than a pound total. Next, we have some all-purpose flour, about a 1/4 cup, and then 2 large eggs, some panko, which is Japanese breadcrumbs. And you want to use panko, not regular Western style breadcrumbs. Panko is a lot lighter and airier and will give the katsu that distinct crispiness. We'll be using about 1.5 cups of this. We also have some salt and pepper, which are both optional, and then the oil to fry it in. I just use something neutral like vegetable or canola. And that's it to make the chicken katsu itself, but we can't forget about the sides. And the most common and popular one is shredded cabbage. Now, of course, if you don't like cabbage, you can easily use some greens or just eat the chicken by itself. I'll leave that up to you. This is about 1/4 cabbage. I'm going to add a few cherry tomatoes as well. Now for the sauce, the easiest option is to buy tonkatsu sauce from your local Asian store. Bulldog is the most popular and well-known brand and is what I recommend. This is a staple in Japanese households, and we typically don't make tonkatsu sauce from scratch. However, if you do want to make your own, then just follow the recipe on screen. And all you do is just mix the ingredients together. I also like to use some Japanese mayo with my katsu, and then some Japanese creamy sesame dressing for the cabbage, which you should be able to find both at most Asian markets. Alright, that's it for the ingredients. Now let's move on to our prep. So first, let's start heating our oil since that takes the longest. And I use this wok for all my deep frying, but of course you can use whatever you have. Just make sure it's large enough to hold at least 1 chicken thigh. And I recommend about 2 inches of oil depth. Now I'm going to turn this on to about medium-low so that it slowly gets up to temp. Alright, now let's cut our cabbage. And we're basically just going to shred this into very thin slices. We call this sengiri kyabetsu in Japanese, and it's used a lot as a side salad or in dishes like okonomiyaki. So first we're going to cut off this core part. Okay, and then from here, you want to take out a chunk of the inner part and split this cabbage into 2. And the reason for this is because it's a lot tougher to cut the whole thing together like this. So we'll split it into 2 flatter pieces, which makes it much easier. Okay, now we'll start with this larger piece, and we want to kind of just smash it down a little bit here. Now we want the length to be about 2.5 inches or so. So if the cabbage is wider than that, sometimes I'll cut this in half like this. And then I'll cut this diagonally, again about 2.5 inches long. And basically you want to slice this as thin as you possibly can. Okay, watch. And always remember to keep your knuckles forward and never bring the knife above it. Just easy, consistent movement. Alright, now we're just going to put this in a bowl and let it soak in cold water for a bit. Now you want to get the water as cold as you can. This will crispen up the cabbage even more and make it have that nice fresh texture. You can even add some ice in here if your faucet water doesn't get that cold. And we don't want to let this soak for long. About 1 minute or so is fine. Okay, now we're just going to strain this. And I like to give it a little extra rinse here, again with cold water. And that's it. Now let's start prepping our chicken. Okay, first thing we're going to do is trim off any excess fat or sinew or cartilage, whatever you don't want on there. And then now I'm going to butterfly this thick part a bit so that the overall thickness is nice and even. You can also relieve some stress with a meat hammer if you prefer. Having the same thickness throughout will help the chicken cook more evenly, which also helps prevent undercooking. Now I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper over these on both sides. And you can skip this step if you prefer though, it'll still taste great without it. Alright, let's move on to breading these now. So you can see here I have the breading ingredients each in its own container. For the flour, I like to use something flat but has a little depth to it like this plate. The eggs, which I've beaten already, are in this medium-sized bowl. And the panko I put in this deeper baking pan, but you can use something like this plate for the flour as well. And you want to keep it in this order: flour, egg, and then panko, since that's the order we're going to be breading. Alright, so first let's dredge the chicken in the flour. Make sure to get it all around. And then knock off any excess. And then place it into the egg bowl. And you can use hands here or chopsticks or fork, whatever is easiest. I like to use chopsticks because it keeps my hands cleaner for the next step. And you want to make sure to get the chicken fully coated in there. Now let the excess drip off a little bit. And then we continue on to the panko. Now spread the panko all over on top. You want to bury this sucker so that you don't miss any spots. And it helps to gently push down on it so that the panko really sticks on there. Now flip it over and do the same thing. That's about good there. Now we'll just put this off to the side here and let's move on to the next. Alright, that's it for the prep. Now we can start frying. But wait, before we move on, you're obviously a fan of Japanese cuisine, and you probably know how to cook, at least somewhat, right? Well, have you ever thought about making sushi at home? It's actually not as hard as you may think, especially if you follow my book. It's called How to Make Sushi at Home, a fundamental guide for beginners and beyond. I teach you everything you need to know about making sushi, starting with the very basics and guiding you step by step all the way to professional sushi chef level. So whether you're an aspiring chef learning Japanese cuisine, or just have a house full of sushi lovers, this book will be sure to help you. Links are in the description below for those that are interested. Alright, back to our chicken katsu. So most importantly, we have to make sure the oil temperature is right. We want it to be right around 340 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if you have a deep fry thermometer or an infrared one like mine, this is easy. But if you don't, you can do a simple check by dropping in a small piece of chicken, about the size of the tip of your pinky. You want to drop this in the oil, and if you see it sink to the bottom, and if it just kind of sits there, then that means it's too cold. On the other hand, if it doesn't sink at all and just sizzles at the top, that means it's too hot. You want it to go down really quick and come right back up. And you'll see bubbling around the edges as well. Okay, hope I can get a good camera angle so that you guys can see it, but let's try. You see how that went down and then came right back up? And also you see the consistent bubbling around the edges? That's when you know it's good to go. Now be aware though that the oil temperature will go down after you put in the chicken. So keep a good eye on it and adjust the heat accordingly. We want to try to keep it above 320 at all times. So let me double check here with my infrared thermometer. Alright, that's close enough for me. Now we gently put in the chicken. And I'm only going to fry one at a time here so that the oil temp doesn't drop too much. And we want to fry this for about 4 to 6 minutes, turning it halfway through. And this will depend on how thick the chicken is. If it's on the thinner side, then probably around 4. If it's thicker, then closer to 6, maybe even more. And you'll be able to tell when it's getting closer because of the color, which will start turning golden brown. And also, if you're using deep enough oil, the chicken will start floating at the top when it gets closer to being done. Now, of course, the safest and most foolproof way of checking is to probe it with a thermometer. Stick it at the thickest part and you want it to be at or above 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright, that looks good right about there. And look at that nice golden brown color. Now we want to just hold this upright and let the excess oil drip off for a bit. And then I'm going to place it onto this cooling rack and we'll move on to the second one. But before we do, important step here. Make sure to clean the oil with something like this skimmer. You want to collect all the panko from the bottom of the pan or else it'll burn and stick to the new chicken, which obviously we don't want. So just gently scoop out everything that you can. And of course, don't forget to check the temperature again. Alright, I think we're good to go. Alright, and there we go. Now we want to let these rest a bit on the rack so that the excess oil drips off and so that it cools. At least enough where we won't burn ourselves. Okay, once it's cool enough to handle, it's time to cut these. And this is really simple. We're just going to cut it crosswise at about 3/4 inch strips. And listen as I cut this, you'll hear how crispy it is. Alright, time to plate. Now, I don't usually sauce this until I'm ready to eat, but we gotta get a shot on video, right? Yeah, look at that. Good job, guys. Man, my mouth is watering. Juicy, tender, savory chicken with that light, airy, and perfectly crispy exterior, and with the fresh cut cabbage that helps balance out the richness of the chicken. Add a hot bowl of miso soup and some freshly cooked steamed rice. Can't get much better than that, my friends. And speaking of miso soup, check out this video right over here to learn my favorite way of making it. Trust me, you will want to pair it with this chicken katsu. Alright, thanks for watching, and feel free to leave any questions, comments, or just say what's up in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying my content. I'll see you on the next one. Arigatou gozaimasu.